All right, everybody, it is Izzy back again with a biceps and back workout. Not back and bicep, biceps and back. More important muscle groups come first. So with that said, let's get on to the first question of the day. When should you just add a set versus using an intensity technique? So this is going to come down to stimulus to fatigue ratio, just like everything else. The most common situation that you would run into with straight sets is that you're already doing a lot of straight sets for a movement or a muscle group that has a high volume requirement. So take, for example, something like calves or side delts. Maybe you're already doing 4, 5, 6 sets on a particular movement, and adding further sets is going to drop the stimulus to fatigue ratio because you're getting to that point in the movement where you're starting to lose focus, you're starting to lose neural drive because you've done so many sets on the same movement. The other thing that can happen with straight sets on movements that are especially heavily short biased is that your performance can drop really rapidly from set to set. So, for example, if I was using something like the hammer pullover, which is about as short bias as it gets, by the time I've done a third set, I'm working around like 40% of one rep maximum. If I drop the weight again, it's probably not an effective weight for hypertrophy. So at that point, I'd look at an intensity technique with the same weight rather than dropping. Would the quality of the nearby gyms be a significant factor for you when considering a potential move? I don't think you really understand the way my mind works. My goals to me are not some optional thing, and this isn't some little hobby to me. Either I do what I have set out to do, or my life is a failure. That may sound super extreme, but that's how I've always viewed things. That's how I've always operated. And whatever success I have or I don't have, I owe to that mindset. And I really don't see any reason to change that now. When should I try new movements? When I am bulking or when I am cutting? I really don't think your nutritional status is the primary consideration, but if I was going to make an argument based on nutritional status, I would probably argue that it is better to try new exercises when you're cutting because you will need less volume on them for a good stimulus. When you do a completely brand new movement, it is a novel stimulus, and anytime that you expose yourself to a novel stimulus, you need less of that stimulus to get a good result. Which is why over time, one of the reasons why anyway, that movements can become stale. You've just been doing it for so long and now you have to do so much of it to get something out of it. Whereas from a hypertrophy perspective, we aren't specialists. We don't need to squat, bench, deadlift year round. You probably just get more out of doing something new. When would you try to move up to the next dumbbell? So basically I would just calculate this out using an estimated 1 rep max chart and just try to find out mathematically when it seems like you'd be able to do it. So it would really depend on the exact rep range and stuff that you're using. So I can't get any more specific than that. But like if you're doing 8 to 12, you could, for example, find out how many reps that you would have to do with your current weight to get 8 at the next weight up. Is there any hypertrophy benefit to not pulling the slack out of the bar if you use a deadlift bar? No, either you pull the slack out of the bar before you apply maximum force, or you apply maximum force and the bar pulls the slack out of itself and you waste force transfer in the process. So it doesn't make any sense. You should always slack pull the bar if you're using a deadlift bar with a lot of weight. At what weight did you find a split squat unfeasible to unrack? Well, to be honest with you, I have never used free weight barbell split squats in my program for any extended period of time. I've never pushed any split squat of any kind free weight for very long. So I couldn't begin to give you a good estimate on when you should be doing that. Quick note here, I just kind of forgot to film set 4, so you won't be seeing it. Reactive Training Systems has moved away from auto-regulated volume using intra-workout fatigue measures. Would you change anything about the PTW programs? Like, come on, man. Those were written like 6 or 7 years ago. I would change virtually everything about them. Well, what would you change? There's too much. I don't even know where I would start. And nobody can pay me enough to start thinking about novice and intermediate powerlifting programming again. I'm just like not interested. I've made my last powerlifting content. The programs still work as is, as they are, but they're mostly just a relic now. And if anybody wants to have a look at them to try and learn something, that's awesome. But I will never be updating them. I will never be making any new powerlifting programs. What I have done as far as powerlifting content is what it is. It'll just have to stand incompleted, semi-completed. It's not getting any more advancements. It's done. PTW, done. How do you know the people who ask questions so well? Are they your clients? I do have a few clients that ask questions on here, but the reason why I know most of the question askers so well is because I would say like 50% of the questions come from a core group of 24 people or so that ask questions every single day or close to every single day. And I have had extensive DM conversations with most of these people, ongoing in some instances. So that's why. Also, I have a really good memory. Just the truth, not trying to brag about that. Two, what was I going to say? Something like 30 to 40% of the questions come from people who only ask questions once a week, once a month. And like 10% or possibly slightly less of the questions are from people who have never asked me a question before. It's like actually uncommon for me to see a question that's being asked and I have never seen the person's avatar before. They've never asked a question before. I don't see them on my story or anything. How do you get into position for Dante Rose? So I checked my archives and I've already deleted any videos that would have been old enough of me doing this, so I have no video to demo for you. But just start with one leg already back there and then use your leg that's not behind the pad to step forward and have enough room to reach the handles. Once you have a grip on the handles, use the leg that's behind the pad to lever your whole body back there. You can use your hip muscles and your leg muscle to push into that pad and drive everything far back enough that you can get the other leg behind the pad. Or alternatively, man, just ask somebody for a quick spot to help you get in position. That's a lot better than, trying to do some janky thing and accidentally pulling something because you're twisting with a bunch of weight. The last thing I'll say about this too, though, is I'm fairly strong. Dave LaMartina, very strong. Neither one of us is using hundreds of pounds for Dante Rose. Keep that in mind. When doing unilateral movements, should I match reps with my strong side? You absolutely should. Otherwise, you're just encouraging some sort of strength imbalance to develop, which can just get worse and worse over time. So what I typically do is I'll start with the weak side, and then I will match reps with the strong side. Have you ever used the gymleco leverage hack squat? So for those of you guys that have never seen this, maybe I'll put a picture of it, but it's basically a V squat. This is not a real hack squat. They can call it a leverage hack squat all they want. The bottom line is that with these types of squat machines, as you reach the bottom, it's going to pull you backwards at your hips. Okay, so instead of being able to drive your knees forward for quad focus like you would on a pendulum squat, like you would on a hack squat, like you would on a Smith squat, like you would on a barbell squat, it's going to pull your hips backwards and make it more hip dominant. So unless you're looking for a squat variation to train glutes, it's a complete waste of time. I would never use it. What country would you move to maximize freedom and wealth? So there's two big priorities anytime that you're considering becoming an expatriate. Number one is you have to look at the tax situation of the country that you're moving to, and this is going to be specific to you and your business. So whether you're like an independent contractor who's offering like some sort of telecommuted services online, whether you have like a W-2 job at a American company, but you're allowed to telecommute from anywhere, or whether you have a certain type of online business or even a physical brick and mortar location in the US that can be run remotely, there's going to be different situations that are better than others for you. So you need to know what you're looking for. Are you looking for a flat tax situation? Are you looking for something that only has territorial tax? Or are you looking for something like the Cayman Islands, which basically only has like VAT tax? So each situation is going to depend on the person and their business. The second big consideration is, do they have a citizenship program? The USA is one of the only countries in the world where you still have to pay taxes even if you spend the majority of the year elsewhere. Even if you spend the entire year elsewhere, you still have to pay US taxes. So in order to avoid that, you have to renounce your citizenship. The big problem with that is that if you renounce your citizenship, you lose your passport. So if you're going to expatriate and move to another country, you need to have a situation set up where you can acquire a new passport. Some people are lucky enough to have a second passport because of their ancestry or something else, but most people won't have that. So you have to find a country that has a citizenship program, and the best kind of citizenship program for a wealthy person looking to improve their wealth situation is citizenship by investment. And usually this will involve investing anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million into the country. And usually they allow you to do that through real estate, which means you can basically just buy your home there, and that can count as your investment for your citizenship. The third criteria, even if you can find a country that both has a citizenship by investment program and a favorable tax situation for your specific business situation, is you then need to consider quality of life. You need to consider safety and things of that nature. So this is something that you can't just say, this is the best country to be in for wealth and freedom. Everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different because, for example, like if you have a second passport because of your ancestry that's very strong, like let's say you have a German passport, okay? Very strong passport can get you like anywhere in the world. Now, if you decide that you want to expatriate to the Cayman Islands because of how favorable their tax situation is, well, keep in mind that it's a tiny little island that's far away from everything, and it's a shit passport that can't get you into as many places. Some people might be turned off by that weak passport because it's going to mean they can't visit the U.S. as often as they want. They can't even get into certain countries. And if freedom is an important value to you, traveling is probably an important value and being able to travel where you want to travel. However, for somebody who has a German passport because their parents or their grandparents were, direct descendants and immigrants from Germany, they're not going to care about that because the German passport is so strong they can do whatever they want. Second, let's say you do find a country that has, like I said, favorable tax situation, citizenship by investment, and you know what, it's really safe and it's a high quality standard of life, but guess what, it costs basically the same to live in that particular city that you're looking at as it does in the US. So there's so many factors that you're going to have to consider. The international landscape changes every 3 to 5 years. I couldn't begin to tell you what country would be the best for your situation. The more important realization to make is that there is no such thing as the best place for XYZ. Everybody's situation is different, and optimizing yours requires thinking. Do you think teaching has any carryover to the fitness world? Well, if you're planning to do any kind of coaching, then teaching is very similar because it's all about communication skills, finding different ways to say the same thing until it clicks with the particular student that you're trying to teach. That has a lot to do with coaching, especially when we're talking about something like technique. You can say things in different ways, and some people will only be able to connect with one of the ways that you said it. So there's definitely some carryover between teaching, communication, and coaching. What do you keep your fasted blood glucose at? What level would make you worry? So, morning fasted blood glucose levels are measured in milligrams per deciliter, and anything between 70 and 99 or so is considered normal and healthy. When you are between 100 and 125 milligrams per deciliter, you are in a state of like pre-diabetes. Okay, so that is where if I was an enhanced bodybuilder using HGH, that's where I would bring insulin in. Anything over 125 is full-blown type 2 diabetes. That'd be concerning. Why is the close grip bench press considered a tricep exercise even though there is no external torque arm at the elbow? First of all, that's not even true depending on what your bench press technique is. But more important than that, we have to understand moment arms a little bit better. Because just because you can't draw an external moment arm on the elbow joint doesn't mean that the muscle responsible for that joint action isn't being maxed out. Consider a low bar squat with 0 forward knee travel. If we view that from the side, it will look like there's no external moment arm at the knee joint. However, there's still an internal moment arm on the muscle responsible for that joint action. And what can actually happen in a low bar squat is that the quads are maxed out, so leverage is shifted to the hip. So you have to think of those external torque arms that you can draw as additional force that needs to be overcome. So if the quads get maxed out and the hips shoot backwards and now you've got a longer moment arm between the hips and the bar, that may be because the hips have additional reservoirs of strength and force production that can help overcome that additional external torque. And the quads may have been maxed out. But that says nothing about whether or not the quads are working their hardest. The reason that a low bar squat isn't the best alternative for quads isn't because low bar squats don't train the quads very hard. Low bar squats train the quads maximally. It's just that they also train the hips close to maximally and the lower back close to maximally. Because that external moment arm isn't the longest at the knees, that means that the knee extensors aren't working relatively the hardest. And yes, absolutely, a JM press or a skull crusher is going to have a higher relative contribution from the triceps than a close grip bench, but both work them hard. Should I try to pick up freshman chicks at my college, or is it cringe? Trying to pick up chicks is only cringe if you are. Nobody ever gets mad at handsome, cool guys for talking to girls. However, if you're a weirdo, creepy dude who says shit, everyone's gonna think that you are fucking weirdo. So if you are cool and you can be cool, it will never ever be a problem unless you start to get some kind of a reputation. Just remember that college is a situation where you see people over and over and over again. Don't treat it like a dating app or a bar. You have more than one chance. How important is it to progress on drop sets, rest pause, the mini sets, the sets that come after the initial set? Should I base my progress based on the initial set? Should I even log or count the mini sets and drop sets? I just don't understand. If something is important enough to do, why wouldn't it be important enough to track? I mean, why track anything then? Why not just show up, train close enough to failure, do enough volume till it feels hard and you got a sweat on, and then stop? Top set is always most important, but track everything you do. I have knee sleeves and a belt, but I don't use either. Am I leaving gains on the table? Knee sleeves don't matter at all. If your knees tend to hurt and keeping them warm stops them from hurting, then a loose knee sleeve is just fine for hypertrophy purposes. You should not be using tight powerlifting knee sleeves that make you lift more. As far as a belt, if you're not using a belt, you are 100% leaving gains on the table. I think I say this almost every other day in the Q&A, but a belt has no net negative for hypertrophy. On most exercises, it causes nothing bad ever. Even if it doesn't help, it's not negative. And on most exercises, it does help. Use a belt. Do you drive a nice car? What is your opinion of people who have nice things? First of all, I think you're vastly overestimating how much I care what anyone else does. Do whatever the fuck makes you happy, man. I do not give a shit, just as long as it doesn't affect me. I have never driven a nice car in my entire life. I've never even had a car with a car payment. I drive a 2019 Hyundai Sonata, fully paid for. I bought it used. Here's the thing about nice things. Once you make enough money, you have to spend it on something. And everybody has a hobby, or even a luxury hobby that makes them happy. And if they've worked hard enough to earn that, then who cares? On the other hand, you have people who don't even like cars that much, that feel like they need a car for status, and their car payment costs as much as their rent. Now that is a ding-dong. What are those little yellow balls that you use on some movements? They're just like grip attachments, and it makes the grip more ergonomic. It allows me to have a little bit of freedom at the wrist to turn my hand, which makes things hurt my elbows less. As a bigger individual, I don't have as much supination as other people. So it just allows a little bit more of an ergonomic grip on certain movements, which reduces elbow pain for me. Is it normal for my pec to be stiff after training and rehabbing it? I am not a PT, man. You're gonna have to talk to a PT about that. I can't tell you whether or not the experiences you're having with your injury is normal. I could be completely wrong. I could be guessing. I haven't seen you in person. I haven't examined you. And even if I did, I still couldn't tell you because I'm not a PT. So I could just be giving you advice that causes you to hurt yourself further, which I'm not going to do. I'm going to give you the only good advice that I can, which is to see a professional who can diagnose you. What percentage of the Q&Aers are from Bayshore? I would say there's like maybe a dozen people from Bayshore that see almost every single one. And then another dozen or maybe 2 dozen that check in like once a week. I have no idea what the percentage is, but there's really only like 2 or 3 people from Bayshore that actually ask questions on a regular basis. A lot more of them just watch. How old are you? I turned 32 in February. How long do you spend at the gym? I would say I'm at the gym for about 3 to 3.5 hours per session right now, including cardio, warm-up, and whatever other I end up doing. Is the Icarian pre-core super squat the same as the V-squat? Yes. So here's the thing. Any movement where you do a heavy load and you do knee extension under a heavy load is going to train the quads. Is it going to train the quads maximally though? No. To maximally train the quads, you need full knee flexion, maximal knee flexion. What does that mean? It means the knee has to be as flexed as possible. And when you do variations like a low bar squat or like these V squats, what tends to happen is that because your hips travel backward, you run out of hip flexion before you run out of knee flexion. So the hips get maximally flexed, the moment arm is the longest at the hips, and it tends to train hip extension better than it trains knee extension, which is why you have tons of powerlifters with big adductors, big glutes, and not very impressive quads, despite the amazing poundages that they can put up in the squat. Gonna be the same thing with this Icarian pre-core super squat. Not a good movement for quads. I would not use it for quads ever. What is the best way to progress if you're in a slight deficit? Should I just aim to match reps? If you're in a slight deficit, implying a pretty small one, and you're not super lean, like you're not getting exotically lean for a physique contest or a photo shoot, you should just keep progressing. You might progress at a slower rate, but you should still be able to make your micro load jumps. Like, just because you're in a deficit doesn't mean you should automatically stop making progress. I find it very funny that people would ask me that after having seen all my story slides today, where I've lost 5 pounds this week. I'm up reps and weight on the top sets of everything. And granted, yes, there's pharmacology that's helping there, but this is something that you can do as well, even naturally, when you're at the beginning stages of a diet. You shouldn't immediately regress, man. How important is it to keep training exactly the same when you're traveling, using similar machines, etc.? I mean, here's the thing. I just don't see the point in stressing out about something that you're not going to have that much control over anyway. When you're traveling, your schedule is going to be abnormal. Your eating is going to be abnormal. You're not going to have the same machines as usual. And even if there's something similar, every machine is different. They have different friction coefficients. They have different cable pulley ratios. The weights are completely different. Even if they both say 50 pounds, they'll feel completely different. So why stress yourself out about something that you're not going to be able to keep the same? What I would do instead is to look at it as an opportunity to try new things. Is there a cool looking machine that you've wanted to try and it's the first gym you've ever seen it in? Give that thing a try, man. Why not? If you're someone that travels on a super regular basis, you might have to be a little bit more strict about it. But at the end of the day, great technique, proximity to failure, and adequate volume is more important than using the same equipment all the time. How long do you plan to do bodybuilding? What's your plan after that? How will training change at that point? I will be doing bodybuilding as long as it takes for me to reach my goals. And my goals very simply are, number one, to get close enough to my genetic potential, enhanced, to determine exactly where my ceiling is. And then if it is within my ceiling to hit certain competitive landmarks, I will keep going until I hit those certain competitive landmarks that are within my potential. If it's within my potential to win a pro card, then I won't stop until I win a pro card. If it was within my potential to win a pro show, then I wouldn't stop until I win a pro show. Now, my potential is not to win a pro show, I already know that much, but that's sort of what I'm looking at. And I also have a rough time limit of myself of about 40 years old, because beyond that, it's just extending too long into the point where it's going to have massive negative health consequences. At any point, if I achieve those goals before then, I will simply stop right there and right then. As far as what the plan is for after bodybuilding, the plan is to have no plan. I don't need a plan. I have, 10, 15 plus years of delayed gratification, thwarted desires, different hobbies, and different things that I'd like to try that I have put off until I'm done with this. And when I am done with this, I will start attacking that laundry list of things. And the first thing that sets my heart on fire, I'll just stick to it. I don't really care what it is. I don't want to have a plan. I would like to try things with childlike curiosity, basically. And I just have full faith in myself that whatever it is, I'll be able to work hard enough to get good at it, to make it fulfilling. As far as training, my plan is to never step foot into a gym again if I don't have to. I feel like people are like, what about the health benefits? The health negatives for somebody who's like over 200 pounds lean, the longer I train in the gym, the longer I hold on to muscle mass. So people disagree with me on this, but that's fine. From what I've seen, the vast majority of people, besides maybe like Jay Cutler, like the only example I can think of, that keep trying to lift, they just relapse, man, and they go back on cycle and they can't stop. And I can see why. Imagine that you were an alcoholic and you just keep going to the bar to hang out and play pool, but you're just not going to have a drink. Yeah, fucking right, man. And that's what a lot of these people are like. Like, it's just like you're going to keep going to the gym and watch your bench press go from 5 plates to a normal, like 2 plates, 2.5 plates. You're going to watch all your friends that haven't decided to stop keep getting stronger and leave you in the dust. At some point, you're just not going to be able to control the urge to go back on. And I've seen countless guys do this. Ronnie Coleman was still over 300 pounds 5 years after he retired. I don't want to make the same mistake, so I'm just going to quit, man. I'm going to quit lifting. We have reached the end, my friends. Not of life, but of this video. So if you liked the video, like the video. Comments and questions, leave them in the comment section. Subscribe if you haven't already. Enjoy a funny dog photo, and have a good day.